The British rule of India had begun with the advent of the East India Company, a trading house given a charter by the English monarchy and which had come to the subcontinent in search of trade and commerce. It was in the process of protecting its commercial interests that the early company agents actually laid the foundations of the British Empire in India. The East India Company began without a strip of territory, but gradually a warehouse was expanded into a province, and a province into an empire. From 1763 to 1856, there were more than 40 major rebellions recorded against the British in various parts of the country. But these were local in their spread and isolated from each other. (1857). In the desolate confines of the Red Fort in Delhi, an 82-year-old Bahadur Shah Zafar, with the imposing title of the Emperor of Hindustan, but whose writ is now restricted to a small territory between Palam and Yamuna. Some 40 miles away in the British cantonment of Meerut, there is brewing resentment among Indian soldiers against the new rifles and grease-laden cartridges issued to them. These cartridges, they have been told, contain beef and pig tallow. Another 300 miles away in Jhansi, Rani Laxmi Bai, the 23-year-old widow of Maharaja Gangadhar Rao, is seething with anger against the British Governor-General. Through a doctrine of lapse proclaimed by him, he had refused to recognize the right of her adopted son's succession to the throne. In a span of 3 short days, between the 9th of May and the 11th of May 1857, tumultuous events were to entwine the destinies of the old Mughal emperor, the young sepoys of Meerut and Rani Laxmi Bai of Jhansi, as well as others. The spark that set off this explosion had been provided on the 29th of March that year, with the execution of Mangal Pandey, who was the first to revolt against the use of the new rifles. Mangal Pandey's execution gave him an aura of martyrdom. On the 9th of May, some Indian soldiers stationed at Meerut revolted against their British commanding officers and headed for Delhi. They reached the ramparts of the Red Fort and besieged the old emperor to assume command. Rani Laxmi Bai herself marched into a heroic battle against the British. In death, she became an eternal symbol of courage for Indian womanhood. The euphoria of this rebellion was, however, short-lived. It was crushed and barbaric reprisals followed. The colonialists called it the Sepoy Mutiny. Indians said it was a war of independence.
Just for the first time that such a large number of people in different parts of the country, drawn from different areas, resisted the British government. It also tried to throw away the British rule in a very, very consistent manner.
In 1858, India became a crown colony and Queen Victoria assumed the title of the Empress of India. But the rebellion of 1857 had already exposed the cracks which were developing in the imposing facade of British colonialists.
People understood the importance of an alien role, the destructive character of an alien rule.
Ironically, this movement was given a national forum by an Englishman. In December 1885, A.O. Hume got together a number of prominent Indian leaders to organize the Indian National Congress at Bombay, presided by W.C. Banerjee and attended by around 72 delegates from all over the country. This innocuous political party in the years to follow was to become a nationwide movement in the vanguard of India's struggle for independence. By the late 19th century, a form of cultural nationalism was already beginning to evolve. It was manifest in the works of poets and writers, including the Bengali poet Rabindranath Tagore, who was later to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. It surfaced in the paintings of Raja Ravi Verma, who used Indian icons and motifs to visualize the many gods and goddesses of the Hindu religious pantheon, thus bringing back a sense of pride in indigenous cultural symbols. It also came in the form of social reforms with the birth of Arya Samaj and the philosophy preached by Swami Vivekananda. Historical events are often propelled by a single adventurous act of rulers. In 1905, Lord Curzon sanctioned the partition of Bengal and argued it was necessary for administrative efficiency. But critics claimed that there was a hidden agenda, that he was using a divide and rule policy as a political strategy. The response from the Indian masses was spontaneous. The partition of Bengal fueled an anger, manifest in a call for the boycott of foreign-made clothes and commodities. There was a mass upsurge almost all over the country, and a militant nationalist sentiment was evident. A sense of outrage and resentment against the British colonialists.
So the whole purpose was to divide Bengal around Hindu and Muslim lines rather than along the lines of language and administrative ability. So it was a part of the policy of divide and rule.
A stream of firebrand leaders stoked this militant nationalism. Bal Gangadhar Tilak symbolized this spirit. Tilak even used the Ganesh Utsav, the worship of the elephant-headed god of the Hindu pantheon, to propagate pride in Indian rituals. And through his paper, Kesari, he preached his anti-colonial message. The British exiled Tilak to Mandalay, but this did not dampen his spirit. And in the famous 1916 Congress session, he declared, "Freedom is my birthright, and I shall have it." Over the years, a pan-national anti-colonial feeling was evolving. There were numerous historical landmarks throughout the 19th century and the early 20th, where this hostility towards the alien rulers burst out more stridently. But what it lacked was a singular focus, a catalyst which would give it a direction, a sense of purpose, and convert it into a mass movement. Gandhi's appearance on the scene transformed the struggle for freedom. He intuitively recognized that freedom was inextricably linked with democracy, with human rights, with the upliftment of the poorest of the poor, with a campaign for the emancipation of women, with the eradication of the caste system, and he familiarized himself with the problems of this India.
That is where we find him getting involved with the problem of the workers, problem of the peasants, problem of women, problem of untouchables. In fact, all marginalized sections, all oppressed sections of society.
It was this concern for the marginalized which gave Gandhi a credibility and an instant mass following. He had a basic sympathy for and an understanding of the problems and psychology of the Indian peasantry. He was therefore able to appeal to it and bring it to the mainstream of the national movement. An important element of Gandhi's message was a plea for secularism, a respect for all faiths and creeds, and this gave the national freedom movement its powerful, all-encompassing character. Gandhi took over the moral leadership of the Congress and transformed the party from a conclave concerned only with the problems of the upper and middle-class educated Indians into a grassroots organization.
Gandhi's advent was an important landmark in the nationalist movement because it really transformed the anti-colonial movement into a very powerful mass movement.
Inevitably, a host of leaders emerged on the scene. Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Maulana Azad, among others. All working under the leadership of this man who was already becoming an ascetic and whose doctrine was ahimsa, a powerful plea for non-violence. His strategy, peaceful non-cooperation. It was a persuasive and novel philosophy, but one which the British were not willing to understand. The 1919 massacre of thousands of peaceful demonstrators in Jallianwala Bagh in Amritsar by the British Army saw the unleashing of a fresh round of civil disobedience. This time, Gandhi came out with a call for Swadeshi, for a boycott of foreign clothes, for crippling the cloth mills of Manchester with the use of his charkha, the spinning wheel, which became his symbol for self-reliance. For Mahatma Gandhi, symbolism was important, especially those symbols which represented the aspirations and needs of the average Indian. On the 12th of March 1930, Mahatma Gandhi set out on foot from his ashram in Sabarmati with a band of followers. His destination, 385 kilometers away, the seaside town of Dandi. His resolve to win freedom for his countrymen. Only 10 days ago, the British had imposed a tax on salt. The Salt March galvanized the nation. Thousands of people joined the march. The procession was greeted warmly in villages. Women in huge numbers came out in support. All over the country, demonstrations against the British took place. Once again, a major consolidation of nationalist feelings was evident, and this time it percolated to the grassroots. Finally, on the 6th of April 1930, Gandhi reached Dandi. He picked a fistful of salt and took on the might of the empire. It was a symbol of the refusal by Indians to live under British law. A novel method of protest which gave Gandhian philosophy a moral dimension that was almost transcendental, which gradually made India's freedom struggle an inspiration the world over, among all those struggling against colonialism. Non-violent demonstration was the thrust of Gandhi's form of protest.
He said that I am born in India, so I am fighting for Indian independence. If I was born somewhere else, I would be fighting for something else. But my basic objective is to help liberate humankind from oppression and injustice.
But the British replied with ruthless repression and firing on unarmed crowds of men and women. Over 90,000 protesters, including Gandhi and other Congress leaders, were imprisoned. The Congress was declared illegal. The years that followed saw numerous rounds of talks between the British and various sections of Indian polity. By 1935, through a Government of India Act, the British planned to involve a section of the country into elected provincial assemblies. Only 14% of the population was allowed to vote, and the divide and rule policy was once again evident as an overriding strategy. The elections to the legislative assemblies, organized on the basis of restricted franchise and separate electorates, inevitably produced separatist sentiments.